common to talk about your personal and professional preferences at work. This could be tasks, projects, locations, or jobs you like or dislike. In this video, you'll learn to talk about preferences at work using English verbs called gerunds and infinitives. We'll look at common phrases to discuss preferences and consider the correct grammar needed to use these phrases. These phrases are common to use to talk about preferences. They're followed by verbs, so you can use them to talk about actions you like or dislike at work. Here are a few example sentences. I enjoy working in large teams. I prefer to use instant messaging over email. I don't mind starting early in the morning. I like to edit my projects early in the week. In all three sentences, the phrases are followed by a verb. However, do you notice the difference between the verbs? Let's look in more detail. Some of the verbs are infinitive verbs, which means they use to. Some of the verbs are gerunds, which means they have ing. Do you know why some verbs are infinitives and the others are gerunds? In English, when verbs follow other verbs, they need to be gerunds or infinitives. This depends on the first verb. This first group is verbs that are always followed by a gerund. The second group is verbs that are always followed by an infinitive. The third group is verbs that can be followed by either. So what is the rule to know if it's a gerund or infinitive? There is no rule, so you need to memorize the lists and practice them in speaking and writing. As you become more comfortable with the language, you'll learn to use each correctly. Let's look at some practice questions. For the 5 sentences below, which use gerunds and infinitives correctly and which are incorrect? Pause the video now to decide which are correct and which are not. Ready to see the answers? Hopefully you recognize that number 1 and number 4 are incorrect. That's because don't mind and can't stand must always be followed by ing verbs. They would be correct like this. 2, 3, and 5 are all correct. Avoid is always followed by a gerund. Love and hate are followed by a gerund or an infinitive. Before we finish, let's take the opportunity to practice these phrases and to discuss your work preferences. Here are some sentence starters. Pause the video and complete each sentence in speaking. This will give you the chance to practice the gerunds and infinitives and to practice talking about your work preferences. Now that you've practiced the phrases, your final step is to review the grammar and ensure you're using it correctly. Remember, as you get more comfortable with these phrases, you'll begin to use them properly. If any phrases are new, or you find you aren't using them correctly yet, you need to practice them. Try repeating the phrase over and over with the correct form of the verb, like this. I can't stand going. I can't stand dancing. I can't stand working. I can't stand talking. I can't stand singing. Your goal when practicing like this is to repeat the phrase many times until you become more comfortable with the verbs that follow. If you take time to practice this grammar, you'll be better prepared to talk about preferences, which will help you discuss your likes and dislikes at work.